Welcome to Building Your Brand. This particular seminar was created based on a request of artists from other seminars that we've conducted, integrity shows. So thank you for joining me. My name is Kelly ONeil, and I'm a marketing professional first. I've worked for General Motors for 34 years. I was responsible for advertising and marketing for the majority of that career. I did national advertising for Chevrolet, and I was also responsible for the global brands for service for Chevrolet and Cadillac. So I'm bringing that experience from marketing to the art world. When I retired a couple of years ago, I decided that I was going to focus on art, but I've been drawn back into marketing, which is also one of my true loves. If you want to learn more about me as an artist, you can visit my website, and there's a nice video on my homepage that was created by the City of Farmington Hills. So let's go ahead and get started. So today we were going to focus on building your brand, but I read all of the registrations, and about 40% of you had also wanted to know a little bit about how to market your brand. So I've added to the back end of the presentation some information about marketing. And if you did attend one of my marketing presentations earlier, this may be a little bit of a repeat for you, but it's worth repeating. So hopefully you'll enjoy that part also. So we're going to talk about just knowing your brand and being the authentic you. We're going to talk about conducting a brand audit. We're going to talk about how to build your brand identity. And then from there, how do you build equity in your brand? And then how you take that brand homework that you're going to do and you take it to market to grow your sales. And there will be an action plan, a worksheet provided to you after you complete the survey post this seminar. So your feedback is really important to us. We use that feedback to develop more content for you. And plus, I'm also interested to hear if what I presented today was helpful. Okay? All right. Simply put, knowing your brand is knowing who you are, what you do, why you do it, and why should we care. And for those artists that have been established for a while, you probably can answer these questions with ease. If you take a look at some of the brand marks on the screen, you could probably answer those questions for those brands also. And the reason is those brands have done a great job of developing their brand, their identity, and building equity in that identity. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So your brand as an artist and in the art that you make is really owned by your clients or your consumer, believe it or not. You are nothing more than a steward of that brand. They interpret what your brand and your art means to them. So your job is to curate that and steward that brand identity so that there's alignment between what your clients or customers are looking for and what you stand for. So you start with first being consistent about who you are as an artist and being true to your core values. And most artists create from an emotional place. And so usually that emotional place is the foundation of your values and what's important to you as an individual, and that is expressed in your art. So being authentic to that should be easy for most of you. It's also important to have a defined brand that will distinguish you from other artists. So I know that the art community is a wonderful community where we reach out and we help each other. However, we also compete for business with each other. And so if you're building your distinctive brand, you need to know how you are different than your competitor. What are your distinguishable attributes and your particular value proposition that makes you special or relevant to your customer compared to your competitor? So that's going to be important that you understand that. And I think the reason that's important is your clients and your customers will surround themselves with art that reflects their personalities or passion. Most art is a purchase from an emotional experience. Not all art, some art's functional too, but in most cases when they're purchasing it, it's because it speaks to them. And we've all heard that, right? We've heard people come to our art fair or our gallery and stop and look at your art and they just say, your art speaks to me. And there's not a better feeling than that, right? And what that means is that you've been able to connect to that individual on an emotional level, and that's how you will create a strong brand. And the other element here that's different from any other brand, pretty much, is you as the artist are an important part of contributing to that intrinsic value, because your art is usually an extension of who you are, extension of what you believe and your values and what you find aesthetically beautiful. They're going to want to have an alignment of what you create and what they purchase from you and you as an individual. So as we go through this exercise today, we'll be talking about the brand being your product, but also you, the artist. We could end this seminar right now and say, now you know what it is to be a good brand, but I want to talk about what it is to be a strong brand, because a strong brand is what's going to bring you long-term profitable growth, right? And that involves good, strong brand planning. So you have to treat it like a business, because building your brand is something that you do need to steward. So the first thing we're going to do is a simple brand audit. And many of you have done this in your head, but I'm going to ask you after our seminar to write this down. And so you have a clear understanding of where you fit in your community and in your world, in your segment, right? So you're going to start with a customer analysis, right? Who is your customer? What are the trends that are out there that is making or that is influencing their art purchases, right? What are their needs? Can they be segmented, right? And depending on what you do, you need to kind of write that down in a prose fashion to really understand who your customers are, or perhaps if you're new, who you think your customers will be, okay? And then probably the one that I don't think we think a lot about, and that's our competitors. In order to create that value proposition, that relevancy and that distinction within your market, you need to know who you're competing against. So you can do this through your current knowledge of who you compete against. You can who's with you in an art fair, who you're displayed with in an art gallery, in a retail store, or etc. But identify who you think your top competitors are, and then kind of figure out what you think their brand image or identity is, and what their strengths are, and what their strategies are, and perhaps maybe what some of their vulnerabilities are. Because you want to be able to make sure that you guys are not on top of each other as a brand and competing for the same customer, because that's not going to help you be a distinguished, strong brand in the long run. And then the third one is the self-analysis. You look at yourself as an artist and how you've presented your product and your art through marketing and through events. And you say, what has been my identity as a brand? What do I think my strengths are? What are my capabilities? And what do I value? And when you have that all written down, there should be an aha moment, either where you see you have carved out a unique niche for yourself, or maybe there's some work for you to do. So once you've identified and you looked at yourself, you looked at your competition, and you looked for your customers, you want to do a better job of defining that identity of what you stand for. And we could divide that into 3 categories: brand identity as a product or the art you create, as a person, and then the symbols you use. So we'll start with product. First, obviously, it's the scope of your art, right? What do you do? Who do you sell to? What's the scope? And then what materials that you use. That could be part of your story in itself. And part of the art in itself is the materials you use to create the art to be part of your product and your brand identity. The uniqueness of what you do, either in subject matter or in the materials or process or how your art is presented, is also part of your identity. And then quality value, right? So what is the value of your art and how are you positioning the value of your art in the marketplace? Okay. The next one is you as a person. Again, as I mentioned earlier, because art is very much an emotional connection, emotional purchase, that you as an artist are an extension of your product that you create. And so you want to make sure as a person that there is personality alignment with your product. And those attributes that have how you would describe yourself as a person, do they align with your product? And obviously knowing your competencies, that's going to be very important. What is your speciality? What makes you as an artist unique that shows itself in your product and in your art? And then probably the most important thing as far as building your brand identity and how it's going to help build that strong brand is the relationships that you have with your clients. And we're going to talk a lot about that today. And then finally, your symbols. And this is the marketing part of your brand, your logos, your signatures, the visual imagery you use in your retail store or in your artist tent or in your direct marketing or your business card, whatever visual imagery that you have identified to represent you is part of your identity. So the fonts, the typography, the tone, the spacing, all of that should be curated and carefully created to align all three of these areas for some synergies to create a single brand identity that is unique to you. And then the last one that, and this is if you really want to go all out, but to actually even evaluate the initiatives that you support and making sure that those initiatives also align with your brand. Because as a person, what you say and what you do is also part of your brand identity, okay? So I mentioned briefly about, the fact that art is an emotional purchase. And so one of the things that I think is really important is understanding that the purchase of art is a higher benefit. If you look at Maslow's theory of order, right? The higher is knowing self, right? So art is really you're either pushing a narrative or you're expressing a point of view. It provides the client or customer an opportunity for introspection or contemplation. But in this case, it is an emotional benefit. So part of building your brand identity is being able to articulate to yourself at this point in writing, what is the soul of your brand? What are your fundamental beliefs and values that drive your art? And overall, what do you stand for? So taking a moment to answer these questions for yourself will help anchor you and help anchor your brand positioning in an emotional space, which is going to help differentiate you from other artists and other brands, okay? So now that you've done the brand work and you feel confident that you've carved out your identity and it's authentically you, you need to think about building a sustainable, profitable brand. Okay, so now it's like, all right, now I know what I am and why I'm here and why I should care. How do I keep that brand growing? So there's really 4 categories we're going to talk about. Talk about brand loyalty, which I mentioned before, and we're going to talk a lot about that. Brand awareness, right? Where are you in the specter of top of mind? Perceived quality and your brand associations, okay? So specifically, let's start with loyalty. If you take anything away from this presentation, I want you to take away, it's important that I build a loyal customer base. And the reason is for many reasons, but it will help you grow your brand and your profitability. It also reduces your marketing efforts. It is, they say that it's costs you twice as much to get a new customer than it does to keep a customer. So take that into consideration. Also, loyalty, having a loyal customer base, will attract new customers, right? Because as you know, your loyal customers are excellent advocates. The other thing to think about is that loyalty provides elasticity. So especially when it comes to, let's say, a competitive threat or something crazy like a pandemic, right? Where if you've got that loyalty and you've got that loyal customer base, you can still sustain sales through whatever storm you're trying to weather at that point. The second category is brand awareness. And I mentioned top of mind consideration. And what that means is in the client and the customer's mind, you hold a place and you're important to them. And the larger your awareness is and you have top of mind consideration, the stronger your brand is going to be. It's going to allow you to do more with your brand if you have high awareness. It also will signal to your clientele that in many cases you have a commitment to your art and to your brand, that you're here for the long run. You've established yourself, and therefore you have some substance. So those two things are something you want to pay attention to and try to manage or promote. The next two are perceived quality and brand association. So starting with perceived quality, again, perceived is what the customer interprets the quality to be. It could be the quality of the product, the quality of the idea. It's their reason to buy, right? And that perceived quality will also help you differentiate your position in your category. So your perceived quality could be your attention to detail. It could be the products you use. It could be the topics or the interpretation of an idea is just outstanding to that client. But knowing what your perceived quality is and promoting it is going to build that equity. It also will allow you to easily extend your brand into perhaps a new category, right? Because if you go into a new category with a new group of customers and a new group of clients, that perceived quality can come with you and help reduce all of that marketing resource that you might have to have. The final one is brand associations. So what's a good example here is, let's say you do wildlife and you're really good at birds, right? Maybe you're known as the bird guy, right? Or the bird gal, right? Having those associations, whether it's with your art itself or it's an association within the community or in the art world, that's going to help people retrieve or process any new information that they get about you as an artist. So or your art form. So the more that they know about you, the more that they know about your art, the deeper the knowledge is, the more associations that they have with you. Oh, that artist does birds and he's always at Funky Ferndale, right? And oh, by the way, he was also responsible for the community, food drive, right? Those individual associations build upon the equity of your brand. And so that's why aligning that is going to be important. And promoting it and connecting it is also going to be important because it's building a bigger impression of who you are with that client and customer. And of course, when you do build these associations, you want to create those positive attitude and feelings. Unless, of course, your brand is about anger or something, but you generally speaking, whatever those attributes that you defined your brand to mean, those personality types, you want those associations to be in line with that. Okay. So let's talk about how we do that in each of those 4 categories. So, okay, that's kind of the theory of building equity. Now, what do I do as an artist in each of these areas to grow my brand? So let's start with loyalty. The first thing you can do, and we're going to talk more about this in marketing, is build a strong customer relation management program. And that is building that relationship with your customers and building repeat buyers. You also can have a program or process or initiative in place to show appreciation for referrals. So if you don't know what you do when you get a referral, then you need to think about that. If a loyal customer refers you to a new customer, how are you recognizing that? How are you appreciating that referral? And you need to formalize that in your marketing and your brand plan. And then you have to have customer-friendly policies, especially if your focus is on brand loyalty. So it could be a very lenient return policy. It could be a repair policy. It could be a payment policy. But whatever those policies are, think of it as the purpose of building loyalty and a relationship with that customer, okay? The second bucket was brand awareness. And here are 4 things that you can do to help build that. The most important thing is being unique and being unique in a consistent way, if that makes sense. So it's about creating that brand position that's different from any other brand, right? So identifying and carving out your place in your proposition will be important. And then once you've got your brand proposition carved out, consistent, targeted, memorable marketing. You have to be in front of your customers and your clients regularly so that they can, you can build that awareness in their brain, or that impression, or that, the associations. They have to build that, okay? The other thing is relevant brand extensions that grow your customer base. So as you become more established and you start to grow your customer base, and you want to grow your brand, you want to think about extending perhaps your art into new areas that take the equity and take your brand identity with it, right? Again, we're building that footprint of association and memorability in the customer's and the client's mind, because you become more top of mind the more attributions and more experiences that they have with you. And then again, if you want to go even farther, what is your intrinsic value in your community? How are you as an artist contributing to your community within your brand identity? It could be that you are providing your time to a mural, or you're providing your expertise to the local school, or you're doing something with the library, or you're doing something unique that aligns with your brand but creates that intrinsic value. The next category is perceived quality. So customer-friendly policies are definitely important here also. Consistent product quality, you probably know that, but that's important. Consistency is important across the board, because in a brand you're building trust, and they're trusting that what they buy from you is going to meet certain quality of what they've purchased from you previously. So that consistency is going to be important. And that also means consistency in pricing and availability, right? So you want to make sure that you're easy to find, you're easy to do business with, your pricing is copacetic with your quality and value proposition, and that it's consistent. And then finally, under perceived quality is a unique product proposition that's differentiated from others. And I have a couple examples. Matter of fact, I saw that Debbie Pratt was on here today, and Debbie does a wonderful job of identifying certain unique propositions. So one of the things that she does with clay is she will find certain historical marks in Detroit, whether it's a manhole or a plaque on a building that has historical value, and she'll create impressions of that. And it's got such great intrinsic value in both building awareness in her community as well as a unique product proposition. And so there's a perfect example of an artist who's actually on our call today that's doing a good job in both of these areas. And then moving on to brand associations, creating a strong brand mark is going to be important. And that can be your signature should be consistent on all of your work. If you're building a logo, make sure the logo is reflective of all of the brand work that you've done and they're using it consistently everywhere. We have a tendency as artists to want to recreate stuff because that's what we do, we're creators. And I can tell you in my marketing world, I had difficulty with this, and my job was I was stewarding the Chevrolet brand. That was my responsibility. But I had my ad agencies who had wonderful creatives always wanting to reinvent the brand, right? And because that's what they do, they create. So, which is wonderful, has to be within your brand identity and equity brand. So make sure you have a good, strong brand mark and you consistently use it over time. Also, make sure you align your brand personality with those positive associations and messages. And then be consistent and specific. So keep in mind, if you try to be everything to everyone, you'll just weaken your brand. So pick your lane, pick your value proposition, right? That product proposition or that unique proposition, and just keep building upon that. So those are the 4 things that you can do right now, okay? There were a lot of established artists that registered today, and probably many of you have already done this brand work. So I wanted to talk about some of the things that you can do now as an established artist to grow your business and grow your brand. So a couple of questions I asked was like, well, when do I extend my current brand, right? So I would say if the market is stagnant or the category has become crowded. So a good example of that, and I don't know if any of you are resin painters, you know, resin painting has become like, you know, everyone's doing it now, right? They go to Home Depot and they buy the resin and the paints, and everyone's doing the paint pouring, and or the artist who's doing the spin on the canvas, right? I mean, I know the very first artist that started doing that was known for that 10 years ago or so. Now everybody's doing it, right? So when your brand and you become stagnant, there's no movement in it, and your customer base is starting to dwindle or die off, right? Or your category has gotten extremely crowded. You want to think about extending your current brand. If you get a new skill, if you have a new idea, or there's an innovation within your art category, that might be a time to extend your brand, right? Also, geographically, right? If you feel as though you've gotten stagnant, maybe you want to look at expanding to a new region or globally, or maybe it's the opposite of that, that maybe you're not doing art fairs anymore, and therefore maybe your art can change because you're no longer being restrained by what you can fit in the back of a trailer that won't break, right? So that can also drive an opportunity to extend your brand. And then finally, a new client demographic or even psychographic. So, you know, the millennials didn't have any expendable income a decade ago, but they do now, right? So you take a look at the millennial demographic, what is important to them? What are their needs? What are the trends in that area? So it goes back to that brand audit that we started with, and we say, okay, I'm going to look at this new demographic, and how can I extend my brand to this client, to this customer base? So those are ideas that you can use to extend your current brand. The other thing you could do is you could have a brand extension. So you want to craft your brand identity or your brand extension that's going to leverage the strength or uniqueness of your core brand. So you're not going to jump from, let's say, I do paintings of wildlife, and now and bugs, and now I'm going to start writing sci-fi stories, right? Like that's a huge leap, and you can do it. It's a different brand. It's going to take more marketing, unless of course your sci-fi is about outer space bugs, I guess, maybe, I don't know. But you could extend from, let's say you do wildlife painting, to now you're going to go to 3D art and maybe incorporate wildlife artistically into furniture, right? So you could extend your brand into a new category, into a new demographic, while maintaining that core uniqueness in your core identity, okay? The other two opportunities for established artists is moving up or down market or up market, okay? And when you move down market, and this is what I haven't figured out in the art world, and I haven't seen anybody do this well, is, well, to start with, if you're going to do this, it should be a parent-child relationship to the new series identity, right? So whatever your down market is, or your less expensive item, let's say you do all original work, and now you found one unique idea and you want to do production work, okay? You have to make sure that they're somehow connected. But it's also really important that when you are launching that, let's say that production series, you have to elevate the parent brand at the same time. It's a concert of efforts. It's a concert of marketing. They're still connected in your identity of who you are as an artist, but you don't want to cannibalize, let's say, your upmarket strategy, your $5,000 paintings with, $50 prints, right? You have to watch for those cannibalizations. And I see it happen a lot in art fairs, where there has to be a better way, where the artist has these beautiful originals, and they're 10 times more than the print, and everyone's just buying the prints, and hopefully he'll sell an original today. There's got to be a better system for that. And I'm not a painter, so I don't know the answer to that. And perhaps someone could add that into the comment section, the chat section, if they know how to do that. Now, the other option is moving up market. Now, this is a little more difficult. So let's say you are a production potter, right? Doing mostly functional pieces. But you're not going to do the art fairs anymore, and you want to slow down a little bit, and you want to focus more on one-of-a-kind sculpture, right? You got to test out your brand extension into this market to see if you can move from an $18 beer mug to an $1,800 vase, right? So think niche and think limited edition first to test the market, and just figure how high up you can go, and to see if your current customer base will go with you. If they don't, that just means you have to either find a new customer base, or you have to adjust your strategy a little bit. But I think it's real important that when you do move up market, you have to be really clear on what makes this new series a premium series and worth the additional money, okay? So those are just some ideas for new customers, or established artists, excuse me. All right, so now we're going to talk about marketing your brand. So we've just spent the time talking about building the brand. So if you're going to do the homework when we're done, you're going to fill out the sheet. You're going to identify your identity. You're going to have your items on how to build your equity, and you're either going to extend your brand or just reinforce your brand, but you know who you are, you're ready to go. Now you're ready to tell the world, right? I want you to start here. The most important part of an artist's marketing is customer relationship marketing, managing the loyal customers that you have. And this is how you will build lifelong relationships. And in many cases, CRM has been downgraded to direct mail, and that's not what CRM is. It is an exchange of value. It's just like any relationship. It's not a one-way street. It's two-way. It's give and take. If your CRM strategy is just to do email sales flyers once a month on what you have for sale, all you want to do is take. You need to give. And when you give to your loyal customers, they're going to be willing to give back to you. And that is how you create that brand loyalty, which results in higher profitability and increased sales. Okay? So 3 simple steps to start a CRM strategy. So the first thing you need to do is you need to curate your contacts. So everyone is a potential customer or advocate, okay? So you need to have a system to keep them organized and updated. So it can be something as simple as a journal. You can use an Excel spreadsheet on your computer. There's software you can purchase or lease for not a lot of money, all the way up to very expensive software, right? It's up to you and how you want to manage your contacts. And then you want to make sure that when you build your database, that you incorporate analytics and metrics, so you know when you are reaching out to your contacts and to your customers, that you know what yields the best results, right? You need to know what's effective and what's not effective, so you do more or less, right? The second thing you can do, you don't have to do this, but segmentation of your contacts will help build a stronger relationship, because as human beings, we want to be heard. And if we are building relationship, I want you to give me what I need and what I desire, and in turn, I'll give that back to you. But if you keep giving me something I don't need or desire, I don't feel like you're listening to me. I don't feel like we're, connecting. So the way to fix this is to create segmentations. And it could be just grouping alike customers. And then for each of those segments, you could build a content calendar, as far as when you're going to reach out to each of those segments, okay? The third element is nurturing the relationship, and that is creating value by providing entertainment and information that's relevant on a regular basis. So that's what I was talking about earlier. If you are just posting or just sending in your emails, this is for sale this month. This is what I have for sale this month. And that's all you send. You're not investing in a relationship. You're just taking from that relationship. What if you provided some entertainment to that customer that's aligned with your brand? What if you provided some information that would be helpful to them? You are then giving, and then you have earned the right to ask for the sale, if that makes sense, okay? And you want to encourage engagement, because customer relationship management is a two-way experience. It's not one way. And the way you can do that is simply by requesting feedback, responding to any comments that they might make in social media, putting polls out on in your communications, and providing the results of those polls. So you can get started right now, right? You can use a guest book. You can capture names, at an art fair, or emails at an art show. You can capture names right now online in social marketing. You're doing Zoom calls and people are registering. You've got your first list right there, right? So there's your list right there. You could ask for, if they're all other artists, why don't you ask for referrals? I have a really good artist friend who's an abstract painter, and her art and my art complement each other perfectly, and we're constantly sharing contacts with each other. If someone's looking for 2D art, I give them their name. If someone's looking for sculpture, she gives them my name. So there's opportunities there also, even with the art community. Ask your best customers for referrals and introductions to potential customers. Now, you've got to earn the right to ask for this, right? So there has to be a valued relationship there and established, and they had to feel good about the art that they purchased. And in most cases, because art is an emotional purchase and it's an expression. I'm expressing myself of who I am as an individual with the art that surrounds me. I am going to be more than happy to refer someone to you because I want them to feel that same happiness and joy, right? So don't be afraid to ask for referrals. You can start with handwritten notes. We got time on our hands, right? You can start writing handwritten thank you notes, and people save those. Or if they don't save them, they get a little warm fuzzy when they get something other than a bill in the mail, right? You can start a newsletter, and most of your website providers offer this widget for newsletters. So there isn't any reason why you can't just use a template that comes from, whether it's Squarespace or Weebly or Wix. They all have them. Or you could just do something less formal and put it in a simple Word document. So you can start doing those things right now to start building that relationship. But so now that you've decided, okay, I hear you, Kelly. CRM is what I got to start with, and I'm going to start with the newsletter. All right, well, what do I say? And I'm quoting Bill Gates here, but he said, content is king. It was a quote from years and years ago when the internet was first becoming popular. And anyone it's in the digital marketing space understands that it's not just where you say what you're saying, but what you are saying. It makes a difference, and it will help either contribute or detract from your overall brand. So again, we're going to talk about defining our customers. We want to differentiate our customers by needs, wants, and values, because that's going to drive what we say. We are going to build content wells, or buckets, if you will, of topics and stories that you can tell about your art that's relevant to each of those targets. And you're going to build a calendar. So you're going to put those messages in a calendar for each of your targets, and then you're going to populate it with targets and stories based on your content well. So you can just imagine a calendar, and you say, I'm going to promote this to this group of people here, I'm going to promote this to this group of people here, etc. So this is what it looks like for an artist, right? And you all can do this in the next 60 days, right? So first thing you're going to do is you're going to say, who are my customers? What's the simplest one is retail versus wholesale, right? Because we can all agree that they have different needs, wants, and values, right? If I'm promoting myself to a gallery, right, versus someone who's putting art in their home, what I'm going to talk about my art is going to be a little bit different, right? Because they have different needs as a customer or client. You can also segment new customers versus loyal customers, and the tone and the content that you would share would be unique to each of those different customer bases. Or you could do it by art type. So I'm going to go back to Debbie again, because Debbie does a lot of work that's about Detroit. She might choose to segment by geography. She might say, there's a group of people who live in Detroit and want Detroit stuff, right? Or I have a group of people that live all over the country that are from Detroit and they want Detroit stuff. So she could literally curate a customer base based on people who love Detroit stuff, right? And then all of her content can be about that, right? And that doesn't mean she can't cross-promote to some of our other products, but that's an opportunity to start building a relationship on a common need or value, okay? The next one is content wells. And first one is event announcements, right? So we don't have a lot of them this year, but they're going to be starting up. Mark talked briefly about some art shows and art fairs and unique ways of selling art coming up in the future. And those are going to be throughout now and the rest of the year. So you could have content about event. You could announce the event. You could have content during the event. You could have content post the event. And so you could literally build a story, a month out, during, and a month after, and just keep that content well going about events. You could do a content well about behind the scenes. So for those of you that participated in our video seminar, you created a studio tour. You've already started. You've got your first behind the scenes content done and ready to go in your first content well called behind the scenes. Many of you did demonstrations in that video. You could have a whole content well on how to process. People love that stuff. So when we talked about education and information, the how to, how you do your work creates that intrinsic value, right? And then it could be contents about categories, a particular category. We talked about Debbie and her Detroit themed work, or it could be inspiration. So let's say you're working naturalist and you do all your art is of nature. So maybe part of your content is your exploration of nature. It could be, you know, you got a hike, you up in Mackinac on vacation, your experience at this park or at the beach, or maybe your inspiration is your pet, right? I think of Diane Kramer, right? You know, her dogs are her, she loves her dogs. And, you know, she shares her story of her dogs all the time in social media. And that's what's helped building her brand identity. That could be a content well, right? Her family, your dogs, your hiking, your inspiration. And you need to think about putting a calendar together for that. And then the last one, of course, least but not last, or last but not least, is sales. So each of these other ones, okay, these content wells are contributing to the relationship. You're providing entertainment or information to your client, to your customers, right? And now you have earned the right to ask for the order or ask for a sale, okay? And then what I want you to do is, now you've got your scrap of paper here and you've written out what your segments are. And it's okay just to have one to start. Don't feel like you have to overcomplicate it. And you've decided I'm going to have 2 content wells. I'm going to do how to process and I'm going to do sales, right? And you're going to now put that into a calendar. And you want to build your yearly calendar outline first and say, you know, when do I want to talk to my customers? When is it appropriate for me to talk to my customers? And then maybe fill in the first quarter a little more detail. And then as you know, you want to schedule 2 to 3 weeks out in building your content detail, right? And all of this content, right, is going to go into your media, right? So now, for those of you that have already started, the first thing you're going to do is, you know, understand who buys your art, write down who your repeat customers are, what do they have in common, and do you have different art series that appeals to different customers? So that's the first thing you can do simply for your customer base. The next one, especially for your established artists, I want you to go do a quick audit of the marketing that you've already done. And I want you, and you can do this on Facebook. You can, if you do a newsletter, you've got newsletter analytics on your website. You also get analytics from Instagram and even email opens if you're using like a Survey Monkey or something for emails, right? So go back and do a quick audit and understand what worked and why. So sometimes when you take a moment and you look back a couple of months, something will rise to the top, right? And it could be the fact that that particular communication was extremely relevant based on timing and what was happening in current events. But then you know that, and you've marked that down. You said, you know, my customers respond well to me providing information or content that aligns with current events, right? Or maybe you did a post on a new series that you're doing, and no one responded. You didn't get any likes and no shares, and you know, why do you think that is? So there's going to be a little bit, I want you to go back and audit what you've done before. And then when you find the ones that have worked, you go, oh, here's 12 customers that liked and responded or commented on every piece of communication I did. This is my core group, right? And so then you're going to want to create content for each of those groups around your most popular posts. So the secret of success, if you're going to start with an audit, figure out what worked, and then apply the principles of content management to that work, okay? All right, some tips in creating content. So we're doing on time here. Okay, first, less is more when it comes to text. People don't want to read anymore. We know this. Don't Don't fight it. They just don't, unless they're reading a book. But when it comes, especially in marketing, right? They want to consume in a comfortable, in an easy way, right? And in a passive way, they want to consume your content, right? You want to make it easy for them to consume your content. Make sure that your tone and vernacular, the words that you use, the speech patterns. So if you are a very ethereal watercolorist, then maybe use a lot of adjectives, flowery words to describe your work, right? If you are more about like the grit of the city, right, and your work is, finding unique photography in abandoned warehouses or something like that, your words perhaps might reflect that kind of grittiness of the work that you've done. So make sure that the words that you're using reflect your brand identity. And then align your messaging with the content objectives. My recommendation is to keep it at one message per marketing piece. And the best way of describing this, and I used to say this to my team all the time, because the sales team always wants to shove more messaging into advertising and marketing. And I used to say, okay, I'm going to toss 5 tennis balls at you. How many do you think you can catch? And they're 1, 2, and there'd always be a smart ass and say 5. And then I'd ask, well, if I threw 1 at you, how many do you think you can catch? And everyone said 1. And so the truth is if you keep it simple and you keep it focused and it's easy to consume, you are going to get people to have to cognitively engage in your messaging. If it's too much, if it's too cluttered, if there's too much going on, they won't comprehend it. They'll swipe up or swipe left or whatever they have to do, right? Or click off. So my recommendation is focus on one message per marketing message. And then the most important thing of this is making sure when you're writing your content that you know what you want the audience to do. CTA, call to action. And you have to have this in your marketing. If you want them to share your post, then ask them to share your post. If you want them to visit your website, ask them to visit your website. If you want them to comment or give you feedback, ask. If you want to do an A/B test on this, go ahead and try it. You'll see. Do 2 posts of similar content and leave the call to action off of one of them, and you will see you'll get less engagement. So it's important that on your post, you ask the customer or the client or the reader or the audience of that message to do something based on the objective of that communication. And of course, the objective of that communication goes back to your content wells, right? So if your content well is a sales communication, you're going to ask them to shop, right? If your content is, instructional or entertainment, you're going to ask them to like or comment, right? So think about what the objective is and make sure you include a call to action. The next thing is photography and video. Other than Twitter, you should never post without either of these. Number one, you're artists, so you're probably already doing it. I'm not telling you something you don't already know. But it's important when you are preparing your photography or your image or your video that it identify your style that reflects your brand. So if you're generally, let's say your art and your brand identity is moody, or let's say you're optimistic, or let's say you're classy or serious, whatever that is, you want your photography to reflect that. I'll give you and it should be in a quality way. It should be presented in a quality way. So earlier this spring, we did an online virtual art fair for the Mint Artist Guild. And each of the artists, now keep in mind they're teenagers, so I gave them a break. But I asked them to present to me their work, to take a picture of their work so that we can incorporate it into the virtual art fair. And I can tell you, it all came back terrible. It was keystoned, and it was twisted, and it was at an angle, and it was dark, and colors weren't, and I had to do all sorts of editing to create a better presentation of their art. So your photography and the images that you use, whether you get it off the internet or something, it needs to be reflective of the quality of your brand. Can't say that enough. And then you want to create a library of photography based on your content calendar. Don't wait until it's time to post something and then scramble. Start curating what you need now, as soon as you can. And then you want to keep it fresh and relevant to the message. I don't really need to say that, you probably know that. Now, when it comes to video, you want to create video for each content well. And like I said, many of you are already on your way with your studio tours that you've done. For posting in social media, you want to take whatever content you've created and edit that down to like a 15-second promo, right? Just give them the high-heart ones and use that as a promotion. For longer form, let's say you want something more engaging, then 2 minutes or longer, that's fine, but you're not going to put that in social media. You might put that on your website, or you might put that in your YouTube channel and then drive people to it from your social media. So the other thing, the other hint here is one of the things that's super cool for those of you that have an iPhone is, and many of you already know this, but iPhone will create an album for you, or you can create albums on your iPhone. So let's say you are that wildlife watercolorist, and you just went on a hike at Kensington Metro Park here in Michigan, and the wildflowers are in bloom, and you took a bunch of beautiful photography, right? Take that photography, put it in an album on your phone, create an album, and then ask the iPhone to create a video from that album. And they'll does it like that. And you've taken 6 or 7 pieces of photography, and it's created this beautiful little video with nice transitions and a little musical background and a heading. So when you name your album, it shows up at the top. And boom, you've got your first 15-second promo message to talk about your inspiration for the month of July. So use the tools you have, be inventive. And for those of you that also participated in the video production InShot app, another shout out to InShot, really simple solution to creating video right on your iPhone. We all pretty much are aware of the marketing purchase funnel principle. We have either got it in high school or our first year in college, and we had to take that marketing course, right? So the truth is, if you think about when you build your customer base, you have to make people aware of your art, then they have to become familiar with you as an artist and your art. Then they will form an opinion of whether your art is for them. Then they will consider purchasing your art based on a whole bunch of heuristics. And then once they've made that decision to purchase or try your product, then based on that experience, they will determine whether they repurchase or become a loyal customer. This is true of art, it's true of mayonnaise, it's of anything, right? There's a process that we all go through pretty much when it comes to purchasing something, right? So I think you want to think about that when you're starting your marketing. So let's start with social media, and because I think this is the easiest place to start because it's free, all right? So first, a picture speaks 1,000 words. Make sure your art and the images that you use are relevant to your brand identity, okay? And they align with your personality and they support the messaging objective. Second, social media is for engagement. That's its purpose. People go on social media to engage with other people. That's what it's for. If you just go on there with a sales message, you're not using the platforms for what they're for, and you'll fail. So make sure that your content and your messaging strategy uses the medium appropriately. Next, it's not the end all be all, right? You can't just launch a Facebook page and do posts and expect your brand and your sales to grow. It only reaches some of your audience, and someone could post today at 8 in the morning and their audience is on it at 8 at night, and you're so far down their news feed they never see your post, right? So it's fleeting and it's difficult honestly, to create that cognitive connection, because we're swiping like this, right? So a little bit of text, an engaging photo might make them stop and read and look. So keep that in mind, and keep in mind what the platform's purpose is. The other thing that's important, and when we were talking about building awareness, and that's regular presence. So just doing a couple of posts before an event and then going dark until the next event is not going to build your brand. That's why the content calendar is important, because sometimes before you know it, a month has passed. You're like, oh my God, I haven't posted in a month. That will detract from the strength of your brand, the equity of your brand. You need to be top of mind. You need to stay in front of your customer with relevant messaging. So regular presence is going to be important. It's the accumulation of all of those messages, right, that are consistent and on brand, that are going to improve your familiarity and consideration, right? Because you want to bring people in through the top of the funnel and move them down through the funnel, right? Social media is filling the top of the funnel, right? That's where you're trolling for new customers, right? We'll talk more about how to do that. Okay. So I also want you to know the strengths of each social channel. Facebook is your business page. This is where most of your information is going to be, right? This is where you can be a little longer in your posts. You can be a little more diverse in your content, but it's your business page, right? Instagram is like your catalog, right? So your catalog of product, beautiful pictures of your work, okay? Twitter is about joining or starting a conversation, right? It truly is it's a town hall meeting, right? That's what Twitter is. And then YouTube is where you put your content, heavy, engaging content, right? So let's talk about Facebook quickly. Now, if you're a starting artist and let's say you haven't dipped your toe into social media, if you can, select a handle that will be available across all social media platforms, because again, that's part of your brand identity. When I got into this, I couldn't do that. Some of the brand identities that I wanted were taken in many cases. So try to find one that's unique to you, that's easy to remember, but can be used on all the platforms. Then you want to complete the entire profile. Don't leave anything blank, right? Because people want to know that you care enough to share who you are in this social platform. So complete the profile. And then once you've got your profile done on your business account, invite your friends and family to like your page and leave a review, right? That's going to start establishing your business page for Facebook. Then once you've got that done, and maybe you've got a couple posts up there, you want to start joining groups that are relevant to expand your network. And you can do that just in the search bar. You just search certain topics and you'll find groups that you can join. Let's say you are a ceramist and you focus, we'll take Debbie again. She focuses on images of Detroit. There are tons of Detroit groups. I bet Debbie is part of all of them, right? And she should be, because it's relevant to those groups, because she creates art for people who love Detroit. And so posting within that Detroit group totally makes sense. You don't want to join a group that has nothing to do. That's kind of like spam, right? So you want to make sure that you're aligning yourself with other networks that have the same values or interests or emotional needs that your art provides. Then my recommendation is you create your content and use a publishing tool that Facebook offers. That's going to help you stay organized, help you stay, make sure your messages are consistent throughout the year. And use the analytic tools to see what's working. Facebook provides this all free of charge. It'll tell you which posts perform better. And then based on that information, you adapt your communications. And then if you don't have a storefront yet, Facebook offers a free storefront. You can go ahead and actually sell off of Facebook if you want to, okay? Instagram. Again, complete your entire profile. You should research hashtags that are relevant to your business. And you can start with hashtagify.me and type in hashtags. So in this example, I typed in the word art just to see what came up. 85.6 popularity, recent popularity 77. So the word art is pretty strong, and then it also gave me some related hashtags: artist, painting, illustration, drawing, photography. So when you're deciding which hashtags to use Hashtagify me to figure out what's relevant for your art and for your audience. Use stories, which is the top of Instagram, for in-the-moment messaging. It's kind of an exclamation point to your brand. Stories are, so let's say, back to the wildlife artist, a dragonfly landed on your finger. You're able to capture a picture of that, right? That's a perfect story post, right? Because it's like, it happened just right now and I'm sharing it with you. So that's what stories are for. It's bringing people into your daily activity, okay? Then you want to make sure that you follow similar artists and follow their followers, right? Because we talked about competitors, and if you've done a really good job of distinguishing yourself as an artist, and you have a unique value proposition, a unique brand proposition, that you can expand your network by looking at who are following artists in the similar category. And then continually, regularly review who you are following and who is following you. There's an explore feature in Instagram that allows you to find more people or brands to follow of like and similarities, so you want to use that. And then a little tip here, you can't use web links or any kind of links in Instagram, but you can put it in your profile. So my recommendation is, if you are going to be an active Instagram user, obviously first start with your website as your link in your profile. But let's say you have an event coming up. You would want, and you're going to have content in Instagram that's promoting the event, then you're going to want to change your link on your profile to that event page so that the customer can find out where to park, what's the venue, what time is the music start, and so forth. And that will help create engagement, okay? So Instagram versus Facebook, and the reason I want to talk about this is because Instagram and Facebook are owned by the same company, and they naturally encourage you to take the same post and post it in both places. And I have to admit, I've done this because I'm lazy and I shouldn't do that, but you shouldn't either. And here's why: because we talked about the different customers that use Facebook and use Instagram, what they're looking for. But you also have probably a group of customers that follow you on both. And it's in a way, it's being somewhat disrespectful to post in both places without thinking about why they're on Instagram and why they're on Facebook. And so you can create a better experience for your client by making sure that the content is different. It can be on the same topic, but it's additive, right? So photos and short videos only, right? If you're going to do that, make sure the content's a little bit different than Facebook. For Instagram, you want to focus on original content. This is not where you share or curate other people's content. You don't forward a meme. This Instagram is about beautiful pictures. It's your catalog. It's creating an emotional experience for the user. And they want to see authentic content on Instagram. In Facebook is where you could perhaps curate, and maybe that's where you share other information, forward other means. But in Instagram, my recommendation is to stay focused on you, stay focused on authentic content that you create. And Instagram is very hashtag friendly. So you can have, a dozen hashtags, and it's not as intrusive as it would be in Facebook, okay? For those of you that are ready to jump in on social media, on Instagram and Facebook, I'm recommending a free content curator, canva.com. It provides you templates for creating social media. They have easy tutorials. They have templates for each platform. You can upload your own pictures, your own logos. They have a full, arsenal of typography and so forth. My recommendation is that you find a design look that fits your brand and don't get too crazy. Because when we go back and we talk about brand identity, we talk about the importance of a strong brand mark and strong image. You want to make sure that you don't fall into, oh my gosh, look at all these different types of templates. I'm going to use all of them. And then all of a sudden, your brand isn't creating any lasting impressions. You're not building that association in the customer's mind because you're everything. You're all over the place. So give it a try, but don't get, enamored by all the choices. Pick a style or one, there's a couple of styles that are similar that fit your brand identity. Make it work for you, not you working for it, and stick to that. Twitter is great for conversations, okay? This is a great place to find new people. Hashtags can help you reach an audience that's interested in a topic. So if your art is topical, Twitter's a great tool to find people that want to talk about the same topic that you're creating art for. You want to keep your content topical around the current events and link it back to your brand. And then you want to decide what conversations you want to join or create. So again, this is purposeful. It's back to your brand identity. It's back to creating equity. You're going to create awareness, right? And in that awareness, what are you going to stand for? So make sure that you join conversations that are relevant and can help build your brand. And make sure you start conversations that are relevant and can build your brand. So plan your initial content and then build your Twitterverse, right? Follow influencers, similar artists or groups, follow their followers. Again, look for hashtags that influencers are using and maybe use those hashtags. Engage and comment on influencers' tweets to grow your followers, and then retweet posts that support your content strategy. So you can dip your toe in, a lot or a little into Twitter, but it's a great place to grow your potential customers. All right, so just briefly, for those of you that don't know what a hashtag is, I mentioned it a few times. It basically indexes keywords for search results, right? The way I like to describe this is, let's say you're in a community center and all the walls have bulletin boards on it. Each bulletin board is for a different topic, right? So you've got school over here, you've got community events, you've got church events, you've got music events and so forth. And if you want to join that conversation, you go to that community board and write your note on a post-it note and you put it up there. And everybody that goes to that community board can see everyone's comments. That's kind of what hashtags are, right? So it's a town hall, it's a community board where people of like minds or want to talk about specific content can find themselves. So it's a search tool. It also helps build brand and engagement by finding people of like minds or like conversation. And people who use hashtags have showed a 50% increase in engagement because people are just finding it. So again, Hashtagify Me will tell you what the top hashtags are. So when I did this search a while ago, COVID-19, coronavirus, and iHeart Awards were the top hashtags for that day. YouTube, it's a great resource. It's a place where you want to keep your content. Everything is going to video consumption. YouTube is the second largest search engine after Google. Pretty much all content's going to be video based in the future. It's something you want to do. If you have a chance to watch how to do a video tour, do it. If you want to learn how to make your own videos, take a look at the InShot app. There's great tutorials on that. The most important thing I want you to know is all of these social platforms overlap each other, right? They might follow you on Facebook, they might see a video on YouTube, they might hear you on Twitter. So your content has to be rooted in your brand and complement each other. So know that your brand is at the center And all of these media outlets are just ways for you to express yourself to others on those platforms. And then for those of you that have a website, fantastic. If you don't, I encourage you to establish one. It truly could be your virtual retail store. It does generate business. It's someplace to send somebody to learn about you. It's your brand hub, right? It's going to promote goodwill among your customers and prospects. It's going to deliver your marketing message. It's your face of your brand. What you're going to get in your packet and worksheet is your first thing you're going to get is a brand exercise. So you're going to take a moment and you're going to write down your brand story. You're going to document your visual styles, and you're going to write down your elevator speech. And I recommend that you start with your artist statement that you currently have and adapt that to what you've learned today, okay? There are 10 guidelines that I'm going to share with you in your workbook to building a strong brand. What you want to do is you want to take a look at each of these guidelines and make sure that you have a clear, definitive point of view for your brand identity, your value proposition, your brand's position, how you're differentiating yourself from your competitor, how you're making yourself relevant to your clients, what you're doing to measure and understand your equity, how you're executing against your brand, how you're being consistent over time, what you plan on doing to invest in your brand. And then I provided some immediate to-dos. So first thing, pull out that last artist statement that you wrote. Make sure that it reflects your brand appropriately. Make sure you can start using storytelling in your artist statement that reinforce your brand. Sign your art, authenticate your art. If you're not doing that today, start doing that. Create a series with a limited edition to help build equity in your brand. After you've done your brand homework, update your environment, update your retail space. Does your packaging align with your brand identity? Do your business cards align with your brand identity, right? I know that maybe you have an old business card from a long time ago, but you know what? Maybe it doesn't reflect who you are anymore. Throw them away or use them to take notes, but update your content. Update your marketing to align with your brand identity and make sure that it supports your value proposition. If I've said it once, I think it's the 6th time I've said it. Building a relationship with your loyal customers is the #1 thing you can do to build equity in your brand. So start there. So in here, you're going to get your immediate to-dos. You're going to get a worksheet on how to do your brand story. You're going to get a worksheet on documenting your brand strategy. There will be tips on growing your brand for those established artists. And then there's a content exercise so that you can start actually writing your first set of content that you can put into your marketing strategy. So that's all I have for today. Thank you for joining me. Here are some references. If you really love branding and you want to learn more, these are the books that I've used over my career, some of the better ones. And for those of you that are cautious about presenting you as part of your brand proposition, let's say you're a little shy, I recommend reading Art and Fear by David Bales and Ted Orland, and I think it will help you in your artistic journey. Okay, well, thank you, everyone.